from our partner institutions have shared with you some of their perspectives on the issues that we'll be discussing today. And our guests also, other guests also shared their views. So we are that much richer in terms of tackling some of the issues that we will be discussing over the next plenary sessions and also the parallel sessions. This session, this is the first plenary session, so our aim is to look back in order to look forward. So the title of our session, as you have seen from the program, is State of Regional Cooperation in South Asia, Revisiting Group of Eminent Persons Report, New Context, Challenges and Opportunities. So as you can see, we will start from looking back at the Group of Eminent Persons Report. Let me, by way of introduction, mention that the Group of Eminent Persons was set up in 1997 at the 9th SAES Summit in Mali. The Group of Eminent Persons included some of the leading lights of those in those days, and we are very happy that one of the key persons in the group, Professor Rehman Sobhan Sir, is with us. From India, it was Muchkund Dubey, Professor Muchkund Dubey from India was also there as one of the eminent persons. There were also others, so we pay our respect and homage to those early pioneers who, at the call of the SAARC leaders in Mali, they responded by preparing the report titled SAARC 2000 and beyond, the vision that they prepared. Now, that report was an ambitious one. It envisaged that there will be a free trade area in South Asia by 2008. There will be a South Asia customs union by 2015, and there will be a common market and economic union by 2020. So within 20 years, their vision was that SAARC will be like European Union, an economic union. So going through the free trade area, which means that there will be no tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers within the SAARC countries, and then moving on to have a customs union, which means that not only will they have a free trade area within South Asia, but they will have a common tariff regime for outside of the world, a common tariff regime. That's the customs union. Then they will have not only free movement of goods and services, but also free movements of factors of production, capital, labor, a common currency, and that's common market and an economic union where you have coordination in your policies, you have horizontal and vertical integration of the economies, and a triangulation of trade, investment, connectivity, and so an economic union. So that was the vision that they set out during those days in their report, which was presented to the SAARC summit, next SAARC summit in 1999. Now, looking back, obviously we know that their aspirations didn't materialize. In 2006, we did have a SAARC free trade agreement, SAFTA, but that also, as we know, there were many exclusions, a negative list, sensitive list, and then customs union and common market and economic union obviously didn't materialize. On the other hand, we are also seeing within the SAARC countries various bilateral, trilateral, plurilateral initiatives. So it's now a world of variable geometry. So, whether they were more aspirational whether they defied the political realities or whether then on the way that SAARC countries have developed their relationship that really overcame the aspirations that they had set out. So to take us through those historical perspectives and also put the current challenges and the context and how to look forward, we have a very distinguished panelist, set of panelists with us. On my right is Ambassador Farooq Sobhan. Obviously, he is very known in Bangladesh and in the region. He has been a career diplomat. He was our foreign secretary, and he was also a special envoy of the Prime Minister thereafter. He was executive chairman of Board of Investment, and thereafter he set up the Bangladesh Enterprise Institute, of which he was the founding CEO and now member of the governing body. So Ambassador Farooq Sobhan was the person during whose time the group of eminent persons was set up. So I will hear his perspectives and we learn from that. And then on his right is Dr. Nagesh Kumar, one of the leading lights amongst the scholars and intellectuals in South Asia and also beyond. Nagesh is now Director and Chief Executive of Institute for Studies in Industrial Development, ISID, India. But before that, he was in UN SCAP. And also the institute that Sachin is now Director General of RIS, our partner. Nagesh was also DG of RIS, and he has been with many institutions, including SACEPS, of which Professor Rehman Sobhan was the founding executive director. He has been on the board of the Exim Bank of India also, and his writings on industrial policies, South Asian cooperation, obviously we still learn from those. So thank you, Nagesh, for being with us here. We have with us also, we are very to have Mr. Abdul Gofran Memon. He is Federal Secretary, Government of Pakistan, and is a career government official professionally for the over last 36 years, and also was Consul General of Pakistan in Hong Kong. So the discussion that we will have, obviously Pakistan and SAARC will be an important part of that. We have on the extreme left Dr. Poshraj Pandey. Dr. Poshraj is executive chairman of SOTI, one of our partners of SAES, and he is now senior economic advisor, Ministry of Finance, Federal Government of Nepal, and has been also a leading scholar on issues of South Asian cooperation and integration, and has been also, he was a member of the high-level panel on technology bank set up by the UN Secretary General. So we will also hear from him. On his right side is Ms. Irosha Kure. Ms. Kure is a professional foreign service officer of Sri Lanka, and more importantly, currently, she is a Director Education, Security and Culture at the SAARC Secretariat. So we have in the launching discussion heard many remarks with regard to what role SAARC can play in the current context. So obviously, that's an important perspective that we'll be looking forward to. And last but not the least, we have also Ms. Mandakini Kaul, Regional Coordinator, South Asia Regional Integration and Engagement, the World Bank. She will be joining us via Zoom. And it's very important because development partners are also now taking interest in South Asian projects, and There was a time when only we saw the Asian Development Bank being involved in cross-regional projects, but we are very happy that World Bank is now taking interest in cross-regional various endeavors, and World Bank is playing a very important role in terms of implementing some of the projects which are cross-regional in nature. So that's also a very important perspective that we'll be looking for. So, having given that introductory remark, let me bring on board Ambassador Farooq Sobhan, because I was mentioning the group of eminent persons which set out that vision, a 20-year vision, was set up when he was Bangladesh's foreign secretary and the special envoy of the Prime Minister. So, Ambassador Sobhan, my question will be, you see, the vision that was set out by the group of eminent persons to transform South Asia into an economic union in the span of 2 decades, 20 years, what do you think? What was the political economy of the period? And what do you think? Was it too aspirational? Did it defy the political realities, or you think that there was a time when really our South Asian leaders wanted to have an economic union in 20 years, and that's something that we can also, in spite of the current realities, being not hostage to this reality, we can also now learn from that. What do you think? 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like at the outset to join previous speakers in congratulating CPD on its 30th anniversary, and also take this opportunity to congratulate its founder, Professor Rahman Sobhan. I'd also like to take this occasion to recall 2 strong supporters of regional cooperation in South Asia who are no longer with us. Dr. Saman Kaligama, who hosted the very first SAES meeting in Colombo in 2008 through his institute, the IPS, and Ambassador Kant Bhargav, who was SAARC Secretary General and who had been a very strong supporter of regional cooperation in South Asia throughout his life. In order to answer the question which the Chair posed to me, I should mention, and I suppose since many years have now passed since the Malé Summit, which was held in 1997, February of 97, the initiative for the GEP, the group of eminent persons, and I'll be excused, I hope, for saying this, was my idea. I was able to convince the 2 key players in this process, namely the foreign secretaries of India and Pakistan. At that time, Foreign Secretary of India was Mr. Salman Haider, and that of Pakistan was Mr. Najmuddin Sheikh. And in private conversations with both of them ahead of the summit, I discussed this idea. I can even go one step further and say that the heads of government had no idea about this proposal at all until we made this pitch to them. So having first convinced them, and the idea is, and what was the rationale? And the rationale was that at that time there was, if you like, a view shared by the foreign secretaries of India and Pakistan that we needed to give the process of regional cooperation a boost. So when India and Pakistan are on the same page, things can move forward. So we were able, in fact, to move forward on the idea of the group of eminent persons. I should mention, as on a side note, that I was also able to sell to our Prime Minister at that time in Male the idea that she should invite the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan for a tripartite business summit to Dhaka. Now, whereas the foreign secretaries of India and Pakistan welcomed the idea of the group of eminent persons, both of them strongly opposed the idea of the tripartite business summit. But they were overruled by their prime ministers. So the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of what has happened in the process of regional cooperation in South Asia tends to be sort of personality specific. The idea of, we were able also to move forward, and I think it would be appropriate to recall this. Mr. Inder Gujral, who was Prime Minister at the time, was himself a great believer in South Asian regional cooperation. So it was a kind of a confluence of people who actually thought regional cooperation could move forward. I think the idea of what the GEP would do, and that's really for the members of the GEP to perhaps expound further on this as to why they came up with such an ambitious program. Well, by the time the Colombo summit took place a year later, it seemed that they had already, the forces had changed, although there was a reference in the declaration about the GEP, and they charged the foreign ministers to examine the GEP report. What we know is that after the Colombo summit, the GEP report died a natural death. So the circumstances had changed. I think what is important here also to recall, I looked at the declaration of the last SAARC summit, which was held in Kathmandu in 2014, and many of the ideas that were put on the table in the report of the group of eminent persons does find its place. But then the issue at the time of the Male summit was really how do we kind of, instead of these annual meetings, SAARC summits, how do we get this whole process of regional cooperation moving forward? The idea, at least as I conceived it, was that we needed to focus not only on a vision, but on implementing that vision. The problem with SAARC over the years, and I might mention that I wrote the concept paper for SAARC in November of 1979. So it's a very old association, and my experience has always been implementation. And the other problem which we all know and are all familiar with is the ups and downs depend so much on Indo-Pak relations and depend so much also on personalities. So, was it practical and realistic? Yes, I think so. One of the things which we always were influenced by was the progress that was being made next door by the ASEAN member states. What had they done, and how they had benefited from what they had been doing through the regional economic process. What is interesting, however, is that the Colombo summit, in effect, whilst kind of sidelining the GEP report, came up with the idea, which was then later reflected in the holding of the South Asia Economic Summit. They in fact called for a regular meeting of government leaders, business leaders, and academics and think tanks. And as it so happened, that did materialize. But I should also mention that every 2 to 3 years, even following the GEP report, references were made in various civil society initiatives that took place to the GEP report. We did try periodically to revive interest in it and in its recommendations. And it does find its way in many documents. I looked at, we organized a meeting in Kathmandu in December of 2000. This was the meeting of what we call the South Asian Commission. It had both as its members Mr. Gujral, who by then had stepped down as Prime Minister, and it also had Dr. Manmohan Singh. They were both there, as were Professor Subhan and others from Bangladesh, and we had Dr. Sartaj Aziz from Pakistan. And we did base some of our recommendations in the South Asia Commission on the GEP report. I'll stop here because the chairman has been making noises that I've said more than enough. I'll be happy, perhaps if there's a Q&A, to try and respond. And I no doubt the other speakers will speak on various other aspects of the topic under discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will bring you once again. Thank you for situating our discussion in that context. And you are very right. The GEP report lived on, and in the work of SAES and other civil society and intellectual endeavors that we have taken since then. But I should also mention that the SAFTA framework agreement was signed in 2004, and the South Asian Free Trade Area was established in 2006. So one of the first milestones of the GEP report, in spite of all the the problems, was indeed implemented. Although, as I said, there are a lot of long negative lists. So, but then obviously the other milestones could not be achieved. Now, given that, and Nagesh, you being in the depth of various issues and that developed since then, And having observed the various bilateral and other initiatives which are being implemented, what do you think? The GEP report was aspirational, ambitious. Should they have taken into consideration the political buy-in issues and perhaps a slower route or another route? What are your perspectives on that?
Thank you, Mustafiz. I think it's a pleasure to be at this very, important forum of South Asian thinking. Despite the upheavals in South Asia, in the political forums and groupings, let me begin by just with two personal notes. One is, of course, I join everyone in congratulating CPD at its 30th anniversary. And I want to recognize the leadership and visionary leadership that Professor Rehman Sobhan has, over time shown in creating many institutions. CPD was only one of his sort of creations. SAES another, and of course the whole institution building for South Asian cooperation, including the conception of SAARC, which was preceded by think tank initiatives. So I want to, sort of pay tributes to Professor Rehman Sobhan, and may he live very long, healthy life, and keep encouraging younger scholars to take up this agenda which he started, and the leadership of CPD, the three successive successors of Professor Rehman Sobhan. Sachin mentioned them as a trinity, and so they need to be an entire team of CPD. The second personal note, I also again join others in celebrating this 40th SAES. So this has continued since 2008 with the pioneering initiative of our late friend Saman Kelegama, whom we miss very much at this occasion. It has continued, and having been someone who has been with this SAES movement, as I call it, from the beginning, and I have attended all of the previous SAES, including the two hosted by CPD in the past. I am very happy and pleased to see it grow from strength to strength, and continuing despite the political differences and sensitivities which have held back South Asia, SAARC summits since 2014. But as we know, I mean, those of us who have observed the SAARC process, we don't know when it will be again back to action, and we let us hope for the best. Now, coming to the question that Mr. Chairman has posed to me, I think GEP report of 1999 was certainly a very visionary document, and ambitious it may be, but I think visions have to be ambitious. I mean, if they only talk about what is possible today, they are not visionary. So I think it had to be ahead of its time, ahead of the curve, and it, as you have said, Mr. Chairman, rightly, SAFTA did come about. There were other proposals like South Asian Development Bank. It did happen in the form of South Asian Development Fund. Hopefully it could transform into a bank in the future. The South Asia Food Bank also did come up. But the problem with all of these institution building, as Ambassador Farooq Sobhan has really mentioned, rightly mentioned, is the implementation. Implementation has not been up to the mark to make them really very effective. So there is work to be done on that side. But I think the world had changed since the 1999 when this report was written by the leaders like Professor Rahman Sobhan. And I believe that in the current context, the regional cooperation assumes a new criticality than it was at that time. Why I do say that? You know, that was the time of heydays of globalization. And as you have been reading, globalization has since turned into slowbalization. This was a term used a few years ago by Economist magazine, but now picked up. And we know for sure that since global financial crisis, world trade has never quite picked up at all. I mean, the immediate, time before global financial crisis struck, 2003 to 2009 or 2008, the average trade growth, annual average rate of growth of world trade and world investment, this foreign direct investment, was between 15 to 20%. Today, you feel lucky if it is anything more than 0%. So world trade and world investment, international investments are flat. I mean, they are not growing anymore. And in that context, you need to find newer engines of growth. And in South Asia, where everyone who has looked into the potential of South Asian intra-regional trade knows that anywhere between 3/4 or 2/3 of the potential remains unexploited. And so if we can do something to exploit that potential, that could be another engine of growth when world trade or globalization, which helped East Asian countries to grow very fast, is no more available for us to ride on. So this is one. And then the other is this departure of the financial economy and hyper-globalization to real economy. So there is now a trend, and incidentally, the new Washington Consensus, Washington Consensus was a term used to refer to liberalization, market economy, market forces, and all that. The world has, the pendulum has swung to the other side now. The focus is on real economy. Productivism paradigm, that Dani Rodrik is calling it to describe, is very much focused on structural transformation, that working on the industry, manufacturing sector, creating decent jobs and all that, fostering structural transformation. So new Washington Consensus is not about liberalization and market forces, it is about industrial policy and all that. And nowhere in the world it is more relevant than in South Asia. We need to really harness the potential of manufacturing sector to create decent jobs. Dr. Ishrat Hussain was referring to that, where are the jobs coming from for this youthful population that we have in South Asia. And so structural transformation and manufacturing sector development needs to be harnessed. And for that, regional value chains could be one major driver of that. The way ASEAN countries used the regional production networks to drive their economic growth, we also need to look at their potential for driving our structural transformation and the decent job creation in South Asian economies, where the youthful transition of demographic transition is the important window of opportunity to exploit. Now, coming to the institutional architecture of South Asian cooperation. Very unfortunately, SAARC process has been stalled. We all know about that. But I think we should not get stuck because SAARC process is right now not on track. I think bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral, sub-regional, whatever initiatives one can look at and harness, one should try while, the SAARC process is on the back burner. One day, hopefully, it will also be activated and it could drive this agenda forward. But in this moment, I think it is important to use whatever options one has. And it was very interesting to listen to the Honorable Minister this morning, Honorable Minister of Planning, how India and Bangladesh are sorting out issues between them and taking and strengthening transport connectivity, restoring all of these links that were there in the past and were abundant in the interim and now being resurrected. So integration through connectivity. And by the way, from the times of the GEP in 1999, when tariff barriers in South Asia and everywhere else used to be very high, and it was important to have trade agreements to bring them down, things have changed. There are autonomous liberalization and tariff rates have come down. What is holding back intra-regional trade is not tariff barriers anymore. It is the connectivity and trade facilitation, transport facilitation that are holding the trade potential from being realized more. And that is where a lot of progress needs to be made. And I'm very happy to see a lot of progress being made in this sub-region between India and Bangladesh, between India and Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, the BBIN, and also the clean energy transition, because there are issues which are confronting us together. The shared and common vulnerabilities to climate change and extreme weather patterns and all that. This is something we cannot do alone. No country in the world can handle these challenges alone. So sectoral agenda to deal with these new challenges is very critical, and commonality of interest should bring countries together, setting aside their political differences. And there, I think, in clean energy transition of South Asia, there is a great example, which has been presented by Bhutan selling hydroelectric, potential to India, and then Nepal joining the bandwagon, and now Bangladesh, importing hydroelectricity from Nepal and Bhutan through Indian territory. These are very important achievements and need to be multiplied, replicated, and scaled up. So I think a lot is happening and a lot more needs to happen. And I think we should not wait for the SAARC process not going at this moment in the very strong manner as it should, but keep this agenda alive and exploit the potential of regional cooperation and integration in whichever way we can, bilateral, trilateral, quadri, whatever. I do not really think it matters as long as we achieve the objective. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagesh. I think that was an excellent sharing of thought. And Nagesh, you are very right. There is a global context, and if we can deepen our cooperation in South Asia can then enter into the globalization process from a position of strength. I think one message is that should stimulate and encourage us to go for South Asian cooperation, whether it is, as you said, bilateral, trilateral, plurilateral. And one important point that Nagesh made is that these could also be building blocks for South Asia-wide cooperation in some time future. If we look at the GEP report, they talked about, for example, regional energy grid. They talked about regional common currency. They talked about telecommunication, regional telecommunication infrastructure. So I think that if we can invest in those, not SAARC-wide, but maybe 2-3 countries, then these can be really building blocks. And you also mentioned about regional value chains and production networks. And that brings me to some of the initiatives that are being taken in that context. And as I was mentioning, World Bank is a major player in terms of providing assistance in cross-border projects. And we are very happy that Ms. Mandakini Kaul, who is regional coordinator, South Asia Regional Integration and Engagement in World Bank, she is there with us. She will be joining through Zoom. Colleagues, where are you?
Professor Rahman, can you hear me, see me?
Huh?
We can't hear.
Oh, we can't hear? Yeah, we can see. Yeah, but...
Can you hear me?
Can you please unmute?
I am unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please, go ahead. Your 6-7 minutes, please.
Certainly, I'll keep to the... So, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here at the 14th South Asia Economic Summit and to join this distinguished panel. I can also see, I was looking through the video, I can see a number of colleagues and friends in the audience. I wish I could be there in person, but unfortunately not this time. I hope I'm able to join the next summit in person. And like the speakers who spoke before me, I would like to congratulate CPD as well as all the other founding members, IPS, RIS, SDPI, and SOTI for organizing this summit since 2008. I read the group of eminent persons note with great interest, and I think this is a very timely and important discussion. So my remarks today will be organized around 3 areas, and I'll try to be brief. The first is cooperation in South Asia, why it matters. The second is the World Bank's approach to regional cooperation. And I'll end with some suggestions for priority actions to take forward based on the lessons of experience of the World Bank. The World Bank has done a lot of research in the last few years on this area in terms of regional cooperation. And I think some of the numbers that I will quote today are perhaps very familiar to several of you in the audience. But I think just to repeat where we are at the moment, it's one of the least connected regions. South Asia is one of the least connected regions in terms of trade. Intra-regional trade as a percentage of total trade is about 5% in South Asia, compared to 26% amongst ASEAN countries and as much as 62% in the European Union. I think trade costs, extremely high trade, transport, infrastructure costs have led to a situation where it is about 15 to 20% less expensive for a company, say in Bangladesh, to trade with Brazil or Germany than it is with its neighboring India. We have estimated some of these costs, and it takes about 22 documents and 55 signatures for trade to occur between Bangladesh and India. There are about 109 process steps from the time an Indian export truck enters Petropol until it is cleared at Benapol. So clearly, South Asian countries are not capitalizing on the advantage of proximity. And this has come out very clearly, both in the note that was shared and also the 2 speakers who spoke before me. We have also estimated what could be the economic benefits of cooperation. And some very simple examples are that annual intra-regional trade could increase by as much as 44 billion. It's about 2/3 below its current potential. And if there was full integration in terms of electricity, hydropower, clean energy capacity could increase almost 3-fold by 2040. And if there was full transport integration between India and Bangladesh, where trucks do not have to stop at the border, can use any border post or roads, we estimate that income levels would rise by as much as 16.6% in Bangladesh and nearly 8% in India. So clearly the potential is there, and we have concrete numbers, concrete estimates about why countries in this region should cooperate, should work with each other. Professor Nagesh Kumar before me spoke a little bit about, and I agree with him about the fact that there has been some momentum for those of us who track the region, who work on the region. We can see that there are some signs that things are moving. I think notably we've seen in electricity trade, India allowed Nepal recently to sell electricity in its real-time energy markets by bidding on power the same day. We also know that India and Sri Lanka are giving a fresh push to the long pending power grid connectivity. So clearly there is momentum in that area. We've also seen, and you mentioned this, a lot of momentum between India and Bangladesh in terms of transport connectivity, in terms of infrastructure. And most recently, in the aftermath of the crisis, we saw how Sri Lanka's immediate neighbors came to support it in a number of ways, including financial assistance as well as support in kind. So there is clearly some willingness, some opportunity, some openness to collaborate and connect. And yet, as we can see, it has not gone, implementation on ground has not been as pervasive as it should be. I think the BBIN Motor Vehicles Agreement is a clear example of this. It was signed in 2015, and to date, we don't see there has been any more, there hasn't been sufficient progress on implementation. The reasons for this, I will not go into detail because I think there is a very informed audience sitting here, but we all understand the complicated history, the size asymmetry. When we talk about ASEAN and we talk about South Asia, there is, the size, the geographic asymmetry is something which is very striking. I've already alluded to the disproportionately high trade costs due to poor logistics infrastructure, insufficient trade facilitation, high tariff and non-tariff barriers. And also, I think to top it all is this insufficient people-to-people interaction where there isn't enough, there are very few platforms where people can get together at an official or unofficial level. And therefore, something like the fact that we are gathering today is very welcome. I will briefly now talk a little bit about the World Bank's Regional Cooperation Program because that may not be very well known to the audience here today. So we began working on regional cooperation in 2010. And since then, our program has increased steadily. We have been working in 3 core areas of focus. The first is boosting economic connectivity, where we look at transport connectivity, trade facilitation, energy markets, regional energy markets. That's an important area of work for us. Also now increasingly looking at digital connectivity. The second area of focus for us is looking at climate vulnerabilities and building resilience. And here we work across the spectrum, looking at mountain economies, blue economies, as well as disaster risk resilience, and the whole area now of looking at cooling agenda. And finally, a comparatively new area for us is looking at human capital development, where we are trying to see if there are ways in which we could work on pandemic preparedness. South Asia, of course, is the only region in the world that does not have a common disease surveillance mechanism. So we are trying to see if we can put in place some building blocks for that, higher education, migration. So these are some of the areas that the World Bank is working on in terms of South Asia. Gender cuts across all of these areas for us, and looking at inclusive regional cooperation is a key priority for us. In terms of the way we work, we do, of course, financing, which is building capacity and supporting transformative regional projects. We also do a lot of convening where we try and bring together people in different platforms of discussion and debate. And I know there are some people here today who have participated in some of the platforms that we have convened. And finally, I think an important part of the work that we do is shaping the regional narrative through knowledge and analytics. There are several reports that we have published on regional cooperation, which have, I think, really moved the needle in terms of showing the potential and the gaps in terms of cooperation. I would like to highlight one project of ours that is supporting Bangladesh and Nepal at the moment to address the key barriers to regional trade. This is called the Accelerating Transport and Trade Connectivity in Eastern South Asia, or the ACCESS project, which really looks at ways in which these barriers to regional trade, manual and paper-based trade processes, inadequate transport and trade infrastructure, restrictive trade and transport regulations and processes, processes can be upgraded and helped to bring together these countries. So in the first phase, access is looking at Bangladesh and Nepal, and later on we will expand to Bhutan, and we continue to discuss with India as well. I know I'm running out of time, so let me now end by putting to the audience, putting to my fellow panelists, 6 suggestions or 6 ways in which we can progress this agenda. The first one, and I think probably the most important, is that given South Asia's dynamic and complex political economy, what we all need to do is to be extremely agile, extremely opportunistic, and extremely nimble. And that means being very flexible in the way we define our geography and looking at ways in which we can take forward sub-regional cooperation for providing the building blocks for future regional cooperation. So whether it is BBIN, BBINS, the Indo-Pacific, being very flexible in the way we define geography, but ensuring that this agenda keeps moving forward. The second is maximizing the gains from this trade, connectivity, interconnections requires a comprehensive and economy-wide approach. We have to make sure that we make it easier for firms and people to have access to opportunities, markets, supply chains, in this day and age of trade environment. If we do that, there will not be sufficient demand for regional cooperation. In order for there to be progress in this agenda, it is very important to build the demand, and the demand has to take place through a wider economic approach, an approach that brings in all the people into this, into these advantages. The third, and I cannot emphasize this enough from our experience, is the importance of dialogue and knowledge platforms with a range of stakeholders. We talk about government, we talk about think tanks. The private sector is a very important player in this regard to both foster trust, move from disbelief to engagement, and also importantly, generate the demand for the regional at the domestic level. The fourth is that from our experience, we have seen that it is often important to have pilots that can demonstrate wins and act as drivers of regional cooperation. So if we are able to begin with smaller activities that can demonstrate what are the gains of regional cooperation, those can then be piloted, those can then be scaled up by development partners, by governments themselves, demonstrate success, demonstrate wins. We've also, the fifth lesson that we have learned is the importance of working with technical institutions, regional and national, that builds ownership and ensures sustainability, be it ICIMOD, SACEP, to be able to show cooperation at the technical level, to depoliticize it, to be able to show how, again, in a sense related to my previous point, how there can be success to demonstrate smaller wins. And finally, and the last suggestion from me is the timely generation and targeted dissemination of accessible, layman-friendly regional evidence that allows governments to take informed decisions. We have seen that it is often the lack of data, knowledge, and interventions that have resulted in policies that may not necessarily be friendly at a regional level. So if we are able to disseminate and lay before everyone this data, this knowledge, this put forward the economic argument, that is far more likely to generate support and interest in regional cooperation. Let me stop there and turn back to you, Professor Rehman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaul. That was an excellent presentation, and your 6 recommendations are very well taken. This is SAES. It's an opportunity for intellectual scholars and players on the ground to share their views from the civil society. And your point with regard to generating evidence-based knowledge and then informing the policymakers to take actions is very well taken from SAES perspective. So thank you for that. And also, we need to take discrete actions, perhaps 2 countries, 3 countries, and then we can expand that. So, and there, the initiatives that World Bank is taking and the projects that it is implementing is important. Thank you very much. But having said that, we are talking about, and you have also mentioned about South Asian community and people like Professor Rehman Sobhan and others. Their perspective is that yes, there is a world beyond South Asia, but there are also commonalities within South Asia which we can take advantage of, and that can help us propel into the process of globalization from a position of strength that I was mentioning. In that context, obviously, the relationship between India and Pakistan and the geopolitics and geostrategic factors are becoming very important. Obviously, what is the reference point that we should take? Should SAARC be the reference point? India is talking more about looking east, BIMSTEC FTA. Pakistan is part of the CPEC and also looking westward. So from that perspective, it will be interesting to know from our eminent panelist, Mr. Abdul Gufran Memon, Federal Secretary, Government of Pakistan. Sir, how do you look at the prospects of SAARC? Obviously, we are taking bilateral, trilateral initiatives, but as you know, Pakistan's perspective is very important in terms of moving forward in the context of SAARC. So, if you could share your views.
Thank you so much. First, I'll be very brief. I know the paucity of time, and I'm quite cognizant of this fact. Number two, my points are totally my personal views, because I'm here in the personal capacity, though I'm a serving federal government, federal secretary. So my point is the personal point. How I look at it is the key factor is that we should not hold SAARC hostage to intergovernmental or interstate differences. Let's change our focus. Why not people-to-people focus? 2 billion people. And as it was informed that this, the creation SAARC itself was the creation of the people of the countries, not the governments. It was the initiative of the social society. So I see it in a different way. So we have to have like a signaling, traffic signal model. You have green, you have yellow, you have red. So break those ideas or break those suggestions into 3 zones. It's a green zone, which is acceptable to the governments, which is acceptable to the people, which is low-hanging fruits kind of thing. Carry it on. You might have a quantum leap in the trade, in business, in culture, in many ways. Then there are yellow areas, like signals. So you have to be very careful. You have to have the dependence on the government, but still you can carry it on. Like visa restrictions are there, but you can have through Zooms, through other medias. So you have other alternative channels to utilize that thing. And then there are red areas. Yes, there are differences. Political differences are there, and that is the fact. It's the ground reality. The differences are there. So I was just asking my colleague here why SAARC is not being summit is not being held, other than the political. So there are technical issues. She was just telling me that technical sessions were held, but because of the regime change in Afghanistan, we could not do it also. So there are factors, there are things, political changes take place. So yes, we have differences, and that differences can also be negotiated and talked about it, but we should not be hostage to those political considerations. We should carry it on. So this is my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for those very constructive remarks. The message is very clear, and we should continue our initiatives, should not be hostage to various bilateral developments, because the people in South Asia, all of us, we stand to gain if there is deeper cooperation. So, and if we take that stance, then obviously there will be in democratic societies the governments will also be influenced by that particular stance. So thank you very much for your remarks. And I will bring Posh as the last speaker. I will bring Ms. Hirosha Kore at this point because I think that she is from the SAES Secretariat. And in spite of the issues and new contexts and new opportunities, new challenges that we have mentioned, the fact also remains that, and it was mentioned in the inaugural session, we did have South Asia Food Bank. We have the South Asian Arbitration Center in Pakistan, the South Asian Regional Standard Organization, SARSO, in Dhaka. We have a South Asian University in India. We have South Asian Development Bank, Development Fund in Bhutan. So there are South Asia-wide institutions also. And SAARC Secretariat, otherwise there wouldn't have been any need for any secretariat. So there are initiatives which are also going on, although we don't have summit. So from that perspective, and also we have our own ambassador from Bangladesh who will be there as Secretary General, and he has very recently taken up his post. So from that perspective, could you please give us some good news about what SAARC Secretariat is thinking with regard to holding the summit, which hasn't been held for the last 9 years, and what other initiatives you are thinking about?
Thank you, Professor Rahman. I also avail this opportunity to congratulate CPT on their 30th anniversary, and thank you for having me here in Dhaka, where I started my professional career 10 years ago. Before coming to your question, Professor, let me allow to brief you a little bit in very concise manner about the progress that we have made during the last 30 years. SAARC is the manifestation of the determination of the 8 member states in South Asia to promote peace, stability, amity, and progress for the region and its people. This is the only regional forum which represents 8 sovereign nations with 1/4 of world humanity. The cardinal objective of the SAARC is the promotion of welfare and welfareness and the well-being of the region and its people. So let me allow to, as I said, I want to brief you about, as you have mentioned in your question about the SAARC University and the SARSO. SAARC serves as a forum of our member states to engage dialogue, and they have enumerated many SAARC endeavors dedicated to face the common challenges in the region. For example, the SAARC Agriculture Center in Dhaka play a vital role in encouraging, collaborating, and exchange of agricultural expertise among the South Asian nations. Similarly, the SAARC Tubercular Center, which is based in Kathmandu, serves as a catalyst for combating HIV and tuberculosis in the region. Likewise, SAARC fosters cultural exchange through regional institutes such as SAARC Cultural Center, which is based in Colombo, which aims at promoting and preserving the regional diverse culture. The SAARC member states of SAARC have initiated numerous projects related to energy. The SAARC Framework Agreement for Energy Cooperation strives to bolster energy security in the area by facilitating energy trade and developing energy sources across the region. In addition, SAARC places a significant emphasis on environmental cooperations, biotechnology, and disaster management sector. in the similar way, the South Asian University encouraged the cooperation in the education sector. While SAFTA is geared, as you mentioned, SAFTA is geared towards bolstering regional economic collaborations. These achievements underscore the potential of SAC in effectively addressing the pressing challenges in the South Asia. Then with that note, Professor, I'll come back to the first part of your question about the SAC's future. I maintain still optimistic view for SAC's future, despite the persistent tension it faces, while South Asia region encounters frequent, unprecedented challenges all the time, but I still believe exists several compelling ground for SAC to be optimistic regarding the SAC future. SAC was established with the aim of fostering regional cooperations. Member countries of SAC acknowledge the shared knowledge of working together and making persistent effort to confront shared obstacles. The commitment of SAC member states to the core principles of peaceful existence, dialogue, and cooperation still remain unwavering. Why do I say that this South Asia region has significant untapped potential? Collaborative effort within SAC can play a vital role in catalyzing economic growth, diminishing poverty, and eventually improving the well-being of the South Asian nations. Through dedicated, sustained endeavors, I believe SAC can transform into a united and actionable platform. Then answering to your second part of the questions regarding the revitalization of SAC, I wanted to highlight 4 points here. As you all know, bilateral tension of member states have decisive influence on the achievement of SAC. The SAC region could address this by improving political relations and cohesion among the member states, thereby reducing tensions and promoting stability in the SAC region. Therefore, integration is the viable solution for SAC. In short, failure to cooperation only result in suboptimal solution that deprive region and its people of gaining significant gains that cooperation can achieve. Secondly, my second point is SAC members should fully engage in the confident building process and re-examine their long-term attitude and strategies for cooperation with other member states. Accommodating and cooperative approach can be more effective and sustainable in the long run than the skeptical or extrovert approach. Similarly, member states may reconsider their past reservation on including security matters and bilateral issues on the SAC agenda. In addition to that, you may know that the SAC Secretariat has no mandate to initiate proposals and explore possibility for further cooperations. From yesterday onwards, I arrived here, everybody is asking whether the SAC Secretariat is alive. I was answering to everybody that SAC Secretariat is alive, but the SAC Secretariat is a member states driven organization. So we are waiting for the member states to guide us. So we are still hopeful as soon as possible. I mean, in the immediate near future, we will be entrusted with the important mandate. And I also agree with this, most of the speakers at the inauguration session and in the panelists have reiterated about the SAC need to learn its lesson from the other regional organizations such as ASEAN, which all these organizations also have some bilateral tension. Despite all these bilateral tensions, they are carrying out their technical and official level meetings. No doubt that the SAC has a capacity in promoting cooperation, especially in the economic, cultural, and social fields, because over the last 3 decades since its inception, SAC has initiated dozens of projects including food security, poverty alleviation, counterterrorism, energy development, and regional environmental action. The initiative aimed to create the SAC regional centers, specialized bodies, and people-to-people linkage programs. But however, while clear progress have been made, much of their work remain on the papers. I have to accept that. With the repeated summit declarations from member states, continuing commitments to the fundamental objective. Thanks to SAC, I have to highlight this, thanks to SAC, the regional leaders has had dozens of opportunities to meet and interact over the 30 years. In many cases, informal interaction between leaders during the SAC summit help reduce tension and enhance cooperations. In some cases, led to important achievement as well. There is in the SAC setup, there is a very concrete structural framework has already been laid out. Now the foundation is there. The only thing is the lapses are in the implementation process. SAC was born out of cultural and social ties of interdependence. So if there is a genuine intent, I believe fixing remedies to SAC is much easier than seeking other options for SAC, because almost all prevailing complications are common amongst all member states. In my view, there is an acute, as you have as everybody is talking about this absence of summit, there is an acute need to convene the 30th summit as early as possible to provide renewed impetus to SAC process. There has been no summit since the 18th Kathmandu summit, which was taken place in 2014, and the 19th summit, which was offered in 2016, remains still pending. In the absence of SAC summit, either virtual or in person, in the immediate future, we may consider the possibility of convening the extraordinary Council of Ministers meetings as provided in the Article 4 in the SAC Charter. Having said that, I do not say that the summit can be replaced by a Council of Ministers meeting, but at the same time, we are convinced that the Council of Ministers can pay a wait for a summit of the leaders and in the near future, with clearing huge amount of backlog which is pending in the Secretariat. Last but not least, sorry, Chair, I took a little bit more time. Last but not least, I'm pleased to inform you all that His Excellency Mr. Gholam Sarwar from the government of Bangladesh assumed duties as the Secretary General on 25th October 2023. So we are very hopeful because he's from the government of Bangladesh, where the concept of SAC was born in Bangladesh. So we are very hopeful, and we hope that his vast diplomatic experience and expertise will bring new spirit to the SAC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kore. I think your last point is very well taken. We should look for options and opportunities to take the SARC process forward. Obviously, it is a member-driven organization. But you have also mentioned some of the initiatives that SARC Secretariat is taking. But without political support, obviously, there is no financial, support as well, which is also very important to take various initiatives that you want to take forward. So we hope that Mr. Gholam Sarwar, Ambassador Gholam Sarwar, will take initiatives. Please convey our best wishes to him as he takes up this high responsibility at a very critical juncture of SARC's history. And I think that you have very rightly mentioned that if we look at ASEAN, for example, there are tensions, bilateral tensions, etc., etc. And if you look at if you read the GEP report, and they also have taken a note of the various perspectives within the region. For example, the GEP report talks about a slow process for the LDCs when they talk about trade liberalization. So that multi-track initiative is embedded in that report also. So we can learn from that and also from other regional, initiatives. I remember that when ASEAN was being formed, there was a slow track for the CMLV, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. So I think that within SAARC also, if we take the various perspectives of various countries, and our executive director mentioned about 3 of the SAARC countries will be graduated from the LDC group. So for now, for example, India is providing zero tariff to all the LDCs. So whether SAARC can also take initiatives in order for the market access to be expanded beyond the LDC graduation. So there are various opportunities which SAARC Secretariat can take. And while we wait for the next 18th summit to take place. Now we had very interesting discussion, and we have our friend Dr. Poshraj Pandey, one of the founding institutions of SAES, and Posh has been taking a lot of initiative. Now he is a senior advisor at the ministry, and obviously Nepal is being the headquarter of SAARC also has a special responsibility. So Posh, you have heard about our various perspectives from our 5 panelists. So what do you think the initiatives that we are now taking, and Nagesh mentioned about that these could also be building blocks for future SAARC-wide cooperation. The group of eminent persons mentioned about South Asian Economic Union 20 years back. Maybe after 20 years, we will once again, have an opportunity to realize that vision. So what do you think? What are your perspectives, given the new opportunities and the new context in the region?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm discussing sub-regionalism in this forum. Initially, I thought could be complicated and somehow controversial issue. But listening our panelists, now I'm convinced that it could be one of the pragmatic options to take forward SAARC. Well, before I go to your question, Mr. Chair, let me pay tribute to a group of eminent persons who had articulated 2.5 decades ago the strategic and aspirational vision for SAARC, as well as the timeline for various outcomes. And particularly, I pay tribute to Professor Sobat. Well, coming to the question of sub-regionalism. Well, I argue it's not a new concept in South Asian region. In fact, the concept of sub-regionalism was conceived during its inception. Article 7 of the Charter, it provides implementing projects involving more than 2 members, but not all member states. So, here implicitly, we have provided space for sub-regionalism in the Charter itself. And looking at that, our initiative on sub-regionalism, in 1996 ministerial meeting, Nepal proposed South Asia Growth Triangle, comprising of geographically contiguous countries Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. I mean, to form a group, but that was failed because of the reservation by Pakistan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. And in 7th SAARC Summit, we also, in our declarations, 10th SAARC Summit declarations, we talked about developing specific projects relevant to specific needs of more than 2 countries. That also opens the door for sub-regionalism. And again, coming to the report of Group of Eminent Persons, we discuss the immense scope for sub-regional cooperations, particularly in area of human capital development, human resource development, infrastructure development, and also resource-based development projects. And recently, 18th SAARC Summit, it also recognized the need for sub-regional cooperation, and it also identified regional and sub-regional projects in power generation, transmission, and trade. So, for me, this sub-regional group supports SAARC from legal and institutional perspective. Again, if you look from, theoretical perspective, and if you look at economic rationale at theoretical level, the first, it's related to the theory of second best. Preferential tariff reduction is always inferior to multilateral tariff reduction. And the outcome of preferential trade reduction may be welfare reducing compared to previous level. So here if sub-regional group helps movement toward multilateral liberalization, then we will be in the right direction. And another, from theoretical perspective, if member of sub-regional group opt for open regionalism, that is, if they offer negotiated preference to members of the region, of the SAARC, then it will contribute towards multilateral liberalization. So even from economic perspective, this sub-regionalism is justified. Well, here, okay, let me try and touch upon the recent sub-regionalism in SAARC. What are the factors that contributed sub-regionalisms? For me, I think there are 4 factors. The first one is external push, particularly multilateral financial institutions. We heard, Mandakini, she talked about World Bank supports on BBI and MBA, and also she talked about transport and connectivity between Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. And again, ADB is also supporting on issues on SASEC and also MBA. So there is external push towards sub-regionalisms by multilateral financial institutions. That is one factor. And another factor is internal push towards sub-regionalism. That is internal within the SAARC. That is slow progress in SAARC because of bilateral issues and power game. And also, the domestic dispute, and also, there are, border disputes. There are a lot of things, within SAARC countries that has pushed us towards sub-regionalism. And another factor is that's the internal within the country itself. That is, for India, that's the New India's neighborhood policy and look east policy. And for landlocked countries, because of high transport cost, we need infrastructure and better connectivity. So that factor is pushing us towards sub-regionalism, particularly for landlocked countries. And another factor is that's the potential of hydroelectricity in Bhutan and Nepal. That has also pushed for sub-regionalisms. And another, fourth factor is resistance to regionalism. In SAARC, that is, there is, I find lower commitment and political commitment. For taking political and economic risk to liberalize at regional level. And that kind of resistance has also contributed for sub-regionalism. So these are the factors which I see contributing towards sub-regionalism. So from institutional, legal, theoretical, and also from pragmatic approach, I think this sub-regionalism is one of the best options to move forward this SAARC. And regarding existing initiative, BBIN, that's the signature initiative for sub-regionalisms, and together with BBIN, India has facilitated on trade and transit issues for Bangladesh, Bhutan, and also Nepal. And India is also providing electricity grid for energy trade between Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, Bangladesh. And third factor is Bangladesh is offering and its port to Bhutan, India, and Nepal. These are other initiatives at sub-regional level. And other, potential areas, for sub-regional, cooperations could be water management, hydropower, connectivity, trade facilitation, and also, disaster management, because of the need for immediate and quick response for relief. These areas could be potential for regional, sub-regional cooperations. So I'm of the view that institution-based sub-regionalisms supported by market-driven could create positive sum game and lend SAARC new sense of dynamism and can propel SAARC to new orbit of economic dynamism and may work as a building block to revive SAARC. Okay, I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Posh, for those very constructive words. And I think all of us, we tend to agree that sub-regionalism is also, could also play a very important role as a building block. Should not be seen as mutually exclusive in view of SAARC-wide cooperation. The frustration is that even when sub-regional initiatives are put in place, like the BBIN motor vehicle agreement, which many of our panelists also referred to, it was signed in 2015. So that was 4 countries. That's sub-regional. So 2015, and then we did the standard operating procedures also. But is 8th year. We haven't been able to operationalize it. But on the other hand, from one of the books by our friend Dr. Sanjay Kathuria, we know that exporting from Dhaka to Nepal is 1.5 times more costlier than exporting from Dhaka to Sao Paulo. So even if we had sub-regional cooperation and we could implement those projects, that would have been good for our consumers, our exporters, our importers. So I think that even in that context, we have to do a lot of things. And thank you very much that you have mentioned that SAARC Charter itself also allows. In fact, the GEP report mentioned about open regionalism. So there also it's reflected. These are not mutually exclusive. So thank you very much. Our panelists, at the beginning, I thought that I will give some follow-up questions to the panelists as well, but we don't have time. But I would seek guidance from our executive director. I would like to take 7-8 minutes more. I have been requested by Dr. Devopriya, Ambassador Munshi Faiz, to have 1 or 2 minutes to share their perspectives. And then obviously Professor Rehman Sobhan sir is here. I will give him my 2-3 minutes to conclude the session. So Devopriya, oh yes. His Excellency Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhary, I will give you. Devopriya, please.
Yes, Chair. Since we had been very late for the morning coffee, I won't hold you back from your lunch. I think we will get it on time, hopefully, South Asian time. So, all protocols observed, let me make one point. Is it time for a new EPG? I think whether it is time for new EPG, it was more than a quarter century back when the eminent person groups was created and mandated by the SAARC at that time. And quite a substantial amount of time has passed since then. And all our opening session speakers and also with this very distinguished panel in this first plenary, we have learned, and let me quote my good friend Shachin on this, and say that we need to have a new narrative and we should not be so pessimistic about it. This is the first point. But at the same time, my other good friend, Dr. Yubaraj Khatiwada said, this was not necessarily a shared robust growth as we have seen in the recent past. But at the same time, Dushni has reminded us that there had been other developments happening all over the world and the South Asia is taken around into pieces, being attracted to that. I can carry on that. But so the first point is that whether we need to review the last 2.5 decades and see what has worked and what hasn't worked, and what are the progresses we have made, and progresses we have made in that way. And so my first point is that whether a new EPG is necessary to consolidate the lessons of the past, what has worked and what has not, and we look at it with a evidence-based approach in that sense. That's the first point. But the second, the challenge of the proposed EPZ would be, if at all, is that to look at the future, but not long-term future, but we know by now after COVID that all future is short-term. So look at the medium-term, create a medium-term vision about it. And we talk about the medium-term vision, we try to look not only at the diversity of the experiences which we have seen in the past, but also at the same time, we also look at 2 specific issues. And I build on what have been said in the morning and just now, including my colleague from the SAARC Secretariat, that we look at the SAARC governance issue and also to reimagine SAARC for that matter in the new dimension. This is one. And the other is, which we have not done so much in the past, is to look at the extra-regional forces, extra-regional factors, how it impinge upon the South Asia at this moment. So what I'm trying to say is that we cannot live in the past. We have to look into the future. Any country which lives in the past is doing it at its own peril. The region living in the past will do it at its own peril. So we'll have to look in the future. And if you look at these people, yourself included and myself, you'll have to give it to the new generation to take it forward. It cannot remain hostage to the oldies who have been so much in love with South Asia, but may not be around for long in that way. So what I'm proposing is that my good colleagues from South Asian institution, Shochin, Posh, Parash, Dushni, Famida, of course, and who else? Abid. So all they will take this one forward, they may consider. My only proposal is that don't call it eminent persons group, call it EPG, expert persons group. Thank you.
Thank you, Deopriyo, for your proposal and reminding us that we are all mortal. But the new generation will also have eminent persons amongst them. So I think that we can have eminent persons group as well. But thank you for your proposal and also reminding us that there are both centrifugal and centripetal forces which are at work, and a new narrative, as Sachin also mentioned, will have to be built. Thank you very much. Ambassador Munshi Faiz, you wanted to make some, very briefly, sir.
Yes. Is it on? Okay. Well, it will be slightly more political than what has been discussed so far. What I'm trying to suggest is that any group effort like SARC is a function of leadership or lack of it. Now, let me put it very bluntly, that India is the largest country here and aspires to regional and global leadership. And we should all feel that they have a lot of qualification for that role. And so we want India to step into that role and graduate into that role by being a true leader, a creative and imaginative leader, to find out ways of reducing tension among the members, bilateral and otherwise, and try to find ways to move forward. Here, something positive is there, which the Indian government can work on, which is their neighborhood first policy. That sounds so good, but it has not worked as well as it is desired. So we hope that in trying to improve their functioning of the neighborhood first policy, they'll be able to lessen the tensions with neighbors, and in the process, it will be easier for SARC to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ekhane then. Ambassador Iftekhar Ahmed Chaudhary, one of the leading lights of our foreign ministry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I should like to cut to the chase very quickly. Mr. Faiz, in your original remarks, you made a reference of the European Union, the European Common Market at that point in time. There's one difference, though. The countries in Europe were already very well formed when the Common Market was conceived. In the case of South Asia, as Professor Ronak Jahan had very powerfully argued in her original thesis, I think, that nations came after the state. States often had to be formed earlier than the nation. So anyway, in South Asia, the state system was soft. So there was an intellectual conflict in us whether we should sort of underscore our commonalities or our differences, because our differences made for our separate sovereignties. So that was an intellectual confusion, which stood in the way of strengthening the unity, of course. Also, we followed the European structural functional procedure Functionalism meant that you wanted to create a spectrum of cooperation across a very broad field, so that even in innocuous subjects, so that these would diffuse tensions at more central levels. That was the idea. So the reason why that did not work so much was our excessive pragmatism. In fact, SAARC is foundering on the rock of excessive pragmatism, I think. That is, I'm referring to Article 10 of the Charter. This is something that we have not discussed this morning. Article 10, as you know, insists that all decisions be unanimous and there should be no contentious issues discussed. So there is some way we have to actually address this decision-making process. It's not an easy task. And unfortunately, just because there is a problem does not mean there is a solution. Yet, I believe that man's reach should exceed his grasp, for what else, as it has been aptly said, what else are the heavens for? I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those comments. We will have to... last embassy. Oh, yes. Yes, I will be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm much enlightened in this conference.
Please be brief.
But I feel, very short, very brief, the reframing fully depends on the changes of our various nations' internal political dynamics. Do you agree? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that that's self-evident. Yes, Mr. Jabbar.
So, Mr. Chair, I think also I'm addressing to the panelists. I have a concern about how to ensure the implementable. I have a question relating to the implementable effectiveness of whatever you call it, eminent person GEP, and move forward. I will call it now super eminent person GEP, SGEP. So we talk about move forward and move forward. I'm in trade politics since 1995, and I've been hearing, I've seen how the bilaterals were working, I've seen how the plurilaterals were working, and also how the regional trade here we are discussing in are working. So the question is very simple. My question is that your report, you see, a note, so excellent, and it provides me a chance to talk a lot in Pakistan when I'm going back. Excellent, you see. You have mentioned rightly a travel from 1997 and with the direction to prepare a vision, which I think correctly you said that from UNESCO that it is a future, you see. When you are giving such a task and you agree to in a summit, and in that task all the things are included, which in your note is also there, establishing free trade area, customs union, you know, economic union and all that, etc., etc. Very good note, you see. It's a history. The history also further, you know, when it reduces to the last paras or it concludes to the last para, says that SAARC process has become dysfunctional, you see. It also said implementation of SAFTA proved to be difficult. You also said most other proposed initiative in the GEP, which will be SGEP, henceforth, in my opinion, report have stalled. So my question is now very simple. Let me simplify. In any project, I will call it a project. In any project, you put a time framework, and that project is under a sustainable monitoring. Whenever it is departing from the objectives which were laid, expressed, and spelled, I'm saying either you review that for what reasons it has stalled, for what reasons it is really, I must say, lagging, or leading. Leading, let's appreciate that. Lagging, so it always requires a continuous monitoring. But now you rightly said that in 2023, this is near the end of 2023, and the aspirations of the GEP have not only materialized, but there has been a backsliding in many areas. So my suggestion now, let me conclude. Although I love to talk more on this issue, but I can understand people may not like it because the lunch was supposed to be at 1:30. So the question is very simple, that how do you ensure in future, because you are a treasure of knowledge and all you people you see, they have knowledge, how to ensure that in future, if any SGEP is formed, how to ensure the implementable effectiveness and how to carry forward, because up till now there have been so many changes. Let us say political, apolitical, these based on those changes, probably this would have been restructured on sustainable basis.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Bolben. Ekটু এদিকে নিয়ে আসেন. Hello. Okay. So this will be the last comment from the floor, and sir, apni ki bolben sir? Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Jay Ghafoor, Director Abdul Monem Economic Zone Limited, and former Executive Director to American Chamber of Commerce in Bangladesh. First, I appreciate this wonderful initiative by CPD and its partners, and particularly I appreciate the chairperson and also the architect of a great organization, Mr. Professor Rahman Sobhan. My question is, I can see one sentence here, reframing South Asian regional cooperation in the new context. There is a need for redesigning of this SARC. My question is, can you please let us know at least 2 successes and 2 failures of SARC? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very perceptive question. I don't have the time to really give our panelists, any time to respond. But there will be other sessions. In fact, many of the questions that have been put, we have separate sessions for those. So we look forward to learning from those sessions as well. So, sir, last word. Ekhane mic ta sir ke. So, sir will have the last word.
Can I be heard? Yes. I'll take it up from Devopriyo's point of the suggestion of a new GEP. As Farooq pointed out, context is everything. So the first GEP could come into existence, I suppose, because you had Mr. Gujral as the Prime Minister of India, and you had Farooq there in the middle of that process to push it forward, and you had Ibrahim Zaki as the host at that time to persuade his president to take it forward. Today, I do not see any official context for a GEP, so perhaps the concluding recommendation of the 14th SAES might be that civil society will create the new GEP, because that's about as far as you are likely to go in this direction. As far as the old GEP was concerned, obviously since we have been discussing all the recommendations of the GEP for the last 13 years in SAES, there must have been some credibility in that agenda. And whether it is realistic or not depended on the changing political context at the official level. But as far as we are concerned, we always believed at the level of civil society that these were feasible options. Otherwise, why would we have spent so many years discussing them?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those wise words of conclusion. I think that pretty much sums it up. If the first GEP was a track 1 initiative, the second GEP could as well be track 2 initiative. And we hope that that will also drive the political process. The first GEP, obviously there was a political drive, but the political buy-in as regards the recommendations was not there. So we will have to create that. And to create that, this type of discussion is, I think, very important. And the presence of the minister and our speaker also testify that Bangladesh is keen on carrying on that initiative, which was started in Dhaka in the mid-1980s. And we will do our bit in terms of advancing the SAARC enterprise, the South Asian identity, which in spite of all the differences, I think is just not a geographical concept. It's more than that. And it's our also responsibility to build up that concept. So with those words, and thank you very much. I was really, I am grateful to you. I saw that everyone was here. No one left the room. And I think that the next sessions and the panels that we will have will delve deeper, go deeper into the issues that we have discussed here. Once again, my apologies to my panelists. They must have answers to some of the questions that you have raised, but they wouldn't, and I wouldn't like to stand between the lunch and this session. Thank you very much.